Happy midnight, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Johnny, and I'm joined, as always, by best buds Colin.
Hey, it's me, back on top. What's up?
And Keaton.
Yo, what's up, Johnny?
Gentlemen. I love that name order has, in and of itself, become a thing.
Is that not your friendship ranking?
Yes, and it vacillates
okay.
that quickly. It vacillates week to week. Yeah, so watch yourself.
Damn.
Brutal, we're going to kick this conversation off. We have a number of games that we're going to talk about, as always, but we're going to kick this thing off, obviously, with the cultural moment that is Elden Ring. We just finished recording an early impressions video. So go check that out on the YouTube channel. We'll probably release it on the podcast platforms as well. So go listen to that if you want to listen to us just kind of ramble for an hour about our initial impressions, our day one impressions of Elden Ring. Spoiler alert, we like it.
It's good.
But go find out why by listening to the thing. But we wanted to kick this thing off with a little bit of an icebreaker, and that just simply being Elden Ring kind of disrupted ours and probably everyone's gaming life. When Elden Ring came out, I said, fuck whatever I was in the middle of. It doesn't matter if it was a 30-hour long RPG or whatever that I was near the end of. It didn't matter. When Elden Ring came out, we're focusing on fucking Elden Ring. You know what I mean? And I'm happy that I am, because Elden Ring is a drug and I can't stop playing it. But that is to say, by the time I finally get back to the other games that I was in the middle of, that's going to be in like 2 fucking weeks, maybe 2 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like I was in the middle of a bunch of fucking things that I was really excited about, but I am no longer excited about. Gentlemen, let's talk about how Elden Ring has ruined our lives. Were you guys in the middle of playing anything that you are now mourning not finishing? Colin, why don't you start, bro?
Yeah, so I was trying to find the perfect game to play leading up to Elden Ring because I knew this would happen, essentially. I was playing Jedi Fallen Order, which is a fantastic game, beautiful, and I decided that I liked it so much I was going to go for the Platinum Trophy. So I was being incredibly thorough, doing all the maps, full exploration, and then Elden Ring hit. And I'm never going to play that game again. It's super unfortunate.
Elden Ring hit, bro. Yep.
I even set it up where I could have beaten the story like days ago, but I was trying to get to the 100%. So not only did I not get the 100%, I'm also just not going to finish the game, and that's a bummer.
Yeah, dude.
This also
for sure
brings to mind how terrible the Horizon series is at release dates. Famously,
poor Horizon, yeah.
The first one, Horizon Zero Dawn, came out 1 month before Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild, I know, dude.
That game is known as the game that nobody played because they were playing Breath of the Wild.
Yep.
And then Forbidden West comes out
behold, bro.
like 2 weeks, and now the entire world doesn't give a shit anymore. So
it's such a shame.
Man.
Sorry, Gorilla.
Such a shame.
Were they originally scheduled to be like 2 weeks after Elden Ring? Because Elden Ring got delayed by like a month.
Both of those games got delayed like a year plus from COVID and all that.
Well, Elden Ring had a January release date like last year.
Yeah, Elden Ring did get a last minute like push into February or whatever, which I'm sure that everyone who just had a hand in making Horizon was like,
yeah, fuck.
Do you have to? Can you just wait until April, please? Nah, sorry, bro. Elden Ring's gonna come when Elden Ring comes, dude. Keaton, were you in the middle of anything that you're now never gonna finish?
I was. I was finally getting to a game that I had been like putting off for years. I didn't have the hardware to play it. PS4 exclusive called The Last Guardian. Huge fan of Team Eco. Love Eco, love Shadow of the Colossus. Both really cool games. And I thought The Last Guardian came out like 10 years ago. Apparently it just came out in like 2016.
Yeah.
No. Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow.
It got
I was with you.
delayed. Had like a 9-year development cycle or some shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
It started its life on the PS3 and eventually got moved to the PS4. Really cool game. Really enjoyed it a lot. It's the stark opposite of Elden Ring. So if I do get a little fatigued of Elden Ring and need a break, maybe I'll go and finish it. But yeah, right now I'm just, I've taken a bunch of recordings. I'm playing on PS5, and the PS5 will let you take up to an hour of the previous footage for PS4 games at least. It does not do the same for PS5 games, but for PS4 games, it always has a last hour. So I'm basically saving every hour of the previous footage. So I have a lot of it, and I can go back and watch some of it, and kind of remind myself of some of the stuff that's happened. But really cool game. I was really enjoying the world and the kind of the mode of exploration and the puzzle solving. And yeah, we'll see if I ever actually get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, a bit of fun folding of video game genetics here. One of the most important games to Miyazaki that inspired him to create Demon Souls was Ico. And now here we are. Yeah, and now here we are 20 years later, and gamers are ignoring, Ico games to play Elden Ring. So get fucked.
Wait,
I'm a big...
What is the line from Ico to Demon Souls?
Eco is like large, open, big space castles. The 1-to-1 isn't like too there, but kind of the aesthetic almost.
Yeah,
and how they play with like space.
Yeah, I think, and just like a general starkness. Everything's just kind of like mysterious and like just kind of like meditative and odd and like I don't know, I think there's a similar obtuseness between the Eco games or the Eco trilogy and what From is kind of doing.
You feel like you're kind of playing out a legend, right? Something that's happened thousands of years ago or something in some like long lost civilization. That is kind of what it feels like, and it's kind of what. Yeah, I totally see that.
Yeah, just like graceful and odd. So, I mean, here we are. I mean, I am definitively a Last Guardian apologist. I was so thrilled to hear you playing that game in the first place, and I hope you do finish it eventually because the ending is actually pretty spectacular. So,
hot take. Shadow of the Colossus, not that good.
That is a hot take. That is a hot take.
Yeah, that is.
But dude, how weird?
Eco's the better game.
I love Eco and I love Shadow of the Colossus and I also love The Last Guardian. But how weird as well, now that we're thinking about fucking Blue Point, think about the games that they remade. They remade Shadow of the Colossus and Demon Souls.
And Demon Souls, yeah.
There's obviously a weird creative marriage there that I think probably deserves some degree of exploration. Yeah, interesting stuff.
And now they're working on Bloodborne. I'm just going to keep saying it until it's confirmed to be true.
Yeah, exactly.
Heard they're working on The Legend of Dragoon.
Oh,
I heard that as well.
Nope.
Hold your breath, baby. Did you play the Blue Point Shadow of the Colossus, Colin?
No, I've got it on the shelf. I also haven't played The Last Guardian, but it's also on the shelf right about there.
Nailed it. The Blue Point Shadow of the Colossus remake is fantastic. It is fantastic. Technologically.
Really, really
if the gameplay itself isn't your thing, I totally get that. But it is a technological masterpiece.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to play a totally mediocre game a second time.
There you go, dude. We are just unearthing the Happy Midnight hot takes as they come, dude. Colin thinks Shadow of the Colossus is a shite game.
He said not that good. He didn't say shite.
Nope, he said it's shite.
It's the same thing. Literal garbage tier.
The point of a hot take is you have to make it steaming. So regardless of the actual truth value of it, it's a hot take. Colin
such a hot take that it's not that good?
It is because everyone thinks it's the best game of all time. So from best game of all time to not that good is quite a stark difference.
It's a gap.
I guess so.
Well, for me, I am certainly, obviously just entrenched in Elden Ring. It's all that I've been thinking about for the past 2 days. But it came at a very unfortunate time for me personally, who was in the middle of a playthrough of a game called Planet Laika. Have you guys heard of this game before?
No.
It is a PS1 sci-fi horror game released only in Japan that a fan translation just came out for. And it is fucking fascinating. And I just like so much applause to the fan translator who just released this, I think, within the last month or so. And I've been entrenched in it and finding it just so interesting. It's such a creative, dark, weird project.
What? It's developed by Quintet?
It's developed by Quintet, dude. Yeah. Yes. There's another team tagged onto that who the name is
Zeke.
Yes. But
what
yeah, this is actually it's almost an heir to the Quintet canon. And it is as weird and as trippy and as fucking creative as the Quintet canon on the Super Nintendo.
Oh my god! I didn't know there was another Quintet game.
Yeah, fan translation just came out. It's a weird horror sci-fi RPG thing that is just so off the wall and fascinating that, like, I have been recording it, so maybe it'll wind up on the YouTube channel eventually. But I mean, Elden Ring's just gonna step all over that shit and say not right now. But yeah, Colin, I thought that might be of a small interest to you because it is. It's
you've
cool.
truly blown my mind. I've literally looked at the Wikipedia list of Quintet games my entire life and just breezed over that every time. I don't know why.
Yeah. I'm about 15 hours into the game, so I think I'm nearing its end. It's just trippy. It's silly. It's so fucking dark and cool. Doesn't matter because Elden Ring. But if I lit you up, people out there, with the idea of Planet Laika just existing, if you speak English, you can now play it. So hell yeah. So gentlemen, Elden Ring is going to obviously possess us thereafter, but we got some games to talk about. So we're going to kick this thing off by throwing to you, Colin, and we're going to fucking talk about just we'll get your take, but my take is a really fantastic video game called Psychonauts, dude. Kick us off, man.
So for the second podcast in a row, I'm talking about a game that is just fucking charming. So I'm learning something about myself, that I just enjoy charming video games. We're talking about Psychonauts, released in 2005, developed by Double Fine, a great studio led by Tim Schafer. Yep. Published by Majesco. What I think is really interesting about the release of this game is that it was funded by Microsoft, and they literally cut funding, and they had to desperately search for another publisher, only to fast forward
because
15
of
years in the
one key
future.
staff member, right?
Yeah.
I was just reading about this. Yeah. Wild stuff. One key staff member leaves Microsoft, and suddenly they want nothing to do with Psychonauts now. It's so crazy that there wasn't a deeper relationship there. I guess just this one guy really believed in it. I'm not really sure what the story is, but...
And then you fast forward 15 years in the future, and then Microsoft bought Double Fine Studios and funded the second half of Psychonauts 2.
Beautiful.
So I think we're all just gonna kind of sing its praises here.
Yeah.
But it's your typical 3D platformer, PlayStation 2 era. It was initially released on the Xbox. What you do is you enter people's brains. They're called their mental worlds, and that's what makes up the levels for the game. So the first one you enter into is a great pun. It's called basic braining.
Beautiful.
Get it? Okay, basic braining. You go into Coach Oleander's mind. Coach Oleander is a war veteran. And
heavy military theme. I think that helps the pun come across even more.
Yeah, sure. And I maybe you just want to contextualize that a little bit about who he is in relationship to Raz and the rest of the campers and stuff like that. Oh,
yes. Sorry. So the setup is that you are a psychic and that your family disapproves of. So you sneak away to join a summer camp. And the summer camp is led by these people who they make up the tutorial levels, actually. So it's Coach Oleander, who is the kind of taskmaster of the camp. Sasha 9, who is kind of the scientific exploration guy. And then Mia Vodello, who is the counselor party girl of the group. I don't know what she does.
Yeah.
Unclear.
But I think basic braining is such a good intro level because all fantastic. It is just fucked up war shit. He is suffering post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's all fucking hell in there.
Taking it out on these children, yeah. Yeah. It's like
just
a Saturday morning
the
cartoon where the kids are all really smart and the adults are just mostly fucking morons, and the kids are just having to deal with all their shit constantly. It's pretty great.
So it is just a 3D platformer. Most of the allure is the worlds and visuals of it. But just to outline, it's a 3D platformer. The
characters. It's
yeah.
It feels like it's written by a Saturday morning cartoon writing team to me. All the dialogue and the characters are all just really snappy and funny.
Yeah, I can't believe they haven't made a Psychonauts cartoon. Actually, that is surprising.
That's pretty mind-blowing,
for sure,
right?
For sure.
But just to outline, since it is a 3D platformer, some of the collectibles, you have to sort emotional baggage. Because of course you do. That one's almost too cute for its own good. Yep. But you find bag tags that you have to find to the corresponding bag. That one's not as good because there's nothing else to it. It's just collect point A to point B. The other one is you have these photo viewers, and it shows you truly traumatic experiences from the person's past. So it recaps Oleander's experience in the war and stuff, and he narrates. You're inside his brain, but he knows you're inside his brain, so he'll like narrate to you that you weren't supposed to see that shit.
Yep.
But that's the kind of shit you're gonna get into. I want to toss it around. Do you guys have any other specific levels that you love, Keaton?
The one that comes to mind that stuck with me the most, and as I was reading about it, I saw it mentioned as like the most famous level is the Milkman Conspiracy.
Yeah.
Shout out.
That one is just incredible.
Yeah, it's undeniable in its creativity in its small ways. You know, like even in the smallest ways, the way in which paranoia is displayed in that world, it's just such an accurate representation of a paranoid mind. You know, it's so. I think the Milkman Conspiracy is fucking legendary.
Yeah, so you're going into the mind of a conspiracy theorist. This guy is so far gone that like every person he sees, he thinks is part of some kind of grand conspiracy. You go into his mind. It's this wild topography of what looks like a 1950s like suburban neighborhood, and you see people like working on the phone lines or the electrical lines or in the sewers, but they're all dressed like 1950s like secret agents. And they're all just like saying like in the exact same voice. They all look exactly the same. They're saying lines that are just so funny. I can't remember any of them specifically, but like using the
we are
words,
all on the road crew. Our backs are killing us.
Yes, we are.
It is very hot here working on the road. Being on a road crew is arduous but rewarding.
Or sometimes they like use the right keywords for that profession, but like totally incorrectly.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember them. If you haven't played Psychonauts, just go play it. And that section is so good. Yeah.
The hedge clipper says, "I take frequent breaks to avoid carpal tunnel syndrome."
Awesome.
John, do you have a favorite level you'd like to shout out? That's pretty much the one, though, for most people.
Yeah. I mean, Milkman Conspiracy is huge, but also I forget the specific name of it, like Velvetopia, maybe?
Black Velvetopia, yeah.
Black Velvetopia to me is so aesthetically stunning. It's aesthetically stunning to me. It's all kind of done in the like art style of kind of like famous Mexican artwork, like kind of like almost like the Day of the Dead type of style, and the entire level is kind of constructed around that artistic or that aesthetic style. It's stunning to look at.
One of the most original level designs I've ever seen. It's so cool.
Yeah. But like honestly, dude, like if we just went through the Psychonauts levels, to me, like each of them stand out in their own way. Like I think about, I forget what Lungtropolis or whatever the fuck, where you're
Lungfishopolis.
Oh my god.
Yeah, where you're like literally a kaiju in the fucking town. You know, like the way in which you actually, every single level is so distinct based off of the weird psychic, I guess, just distortion of the person whose mind you're entering in. Like they just play with the insecurities of that mind in such creative ways. And also, I mean,
that level's incredible.
Mechanically, it's incredible. Visually, it's incredible. Obviously, just Psychonauts, the name of the game is largely flavored comedically. The entire thing is silly and fun, but the underpinnings are darker than you can ever fucking imagine. Yep. And that's what makes it, I think, Psychonauts so special. So like even these levels that we're, talking about, we're laughing at the idea of conspiracies and the rest of it, but then like we're actually dealing with a dude who lives in that brain.
Yeah.
I think obviously
it's dark and it's sad. Yeah,
or like you're even thinking about the like in the war level, the first one, the tutorial level that you were talking about earlier. It's hilarious that like your first take on that as you're learning about why his brain is the way his brain is because he does have PTSD and he's like, like a hardened war general or whatever. You go throughout and you learn actually that he was kicked out of the army. He was never allowed in the army. This is all a projection of his shame. Yeah. Like you get this really nice, like it's almost like a flip book of answers where like you're going through, screen by screen, the truth of the matter once you learn it. And it's like it's these images of him being too short to join the army, and then the Navy kicks him out, and then you know he just goes through all the places, and even like the chefs kick him out. Nobody wants this fucking loser, so it's all an insecurity complex. So like you're going throughout this, you know, what looks like a PTSD trip in this level, and then you learn it's all actually an example of his shame, as opposed to, you know, his valiance and the rest of it. So like that darkness, I think is actually a really cool driving factor without these levels. Obviously, Mia's dance party, I think, is probably the darkest one. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh my god! So the first time I played through, I missed that.
It's insane.
Spoilers for Mia's dance party, but there's a secret side door that you go into where you learn that like she allowed an orphanage to burn down correctly.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
It's just terrifying.
It wasn't her fault, but like in her own head, she has like projections of kids that are like, Mia, why did you let us burn? It hurt so much when I died and stuff like that. So like all of Mia, she's like throwing a dance party literally to forget about the insane trauma in her past.
She begs you not to go in the door. Like she's like, please don't go in there. I don't want to deal with this right now.
Right. And like, and just to think about like on the surface how fun it is. Like even in the dance party, like Raz's standing animation is he begins to dance to like the thing. Like it's so fun and it's so playful. So like to think that all of the fixtures on the surface are fun. To know that there's just the darkest undercurrent beneath all of it is that to me elevates Psychonauts to a place of specialness for sure. I love that shit. It's so creatively interesting.
I must have missed that. Might have to go back.
Yeah, it's a secret area on the side, but it just like puts everything in a whole new light for that level. It's definitely that juxtaposition, right? Because it's incredibly cartoony. It's jokes the whole time, but all these people are so fucked up and it's so dark. The second half of the game takes place in an actual insane asylum. Yep. And you're actually, in theory, helping put these people back together. Black Velvetopia is like a kid who was bullied in high school that's dealing with that. You play as, is it the great-grandson of Napoleon Bonaparte, right?
That's right, who has a complex about it. Yeah.
For Water
that
of the
one
World.
was fun, yeah. Yeah, playing like this tabletop war game and like needing to play his part for him because he's just so apathetic. He's just like, who the fuck cares, man? And you're just like, no, we gotta beat your demons. And like the demon he's playing against is Napoleon, across the table from him. It's
like I think Psychonauts is like peak example of the type of like the things that you inject into child's cartoons so that the adults in the room are also interested. Like if you're a kid and you're playing through this game back in the 90s or whatever the fuck, you are
05.
You are not picking up on most of those subtle things. It doesn't even matter to you. But like once you play it again as you know somebody in their 20s like we are, it just means something so different, you know, and that I applaud Tim Schafer and his team for injecting that so that a child and an adult can both find the fruits of this thing. I love that.
Yeah, so I had first played this game back in maybe like 2012 or something, and I loved it. But I went back and played it just a couple months ago after I beat Psychonauts 2. And it holds up like exactly that. Like I was probably even young enough then where I wasn't like thinking about the depths of everything. But it's just like literally dealing with mental illness in a not like joking way, actually. Right. I mean, I'm not saying this is like a clinical game or whatever, but they deal with it. It's all real shit that people have dealt with, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I just played this game 6 months ago for the first time, and it blew me away. Like, you could release this on a modern platform, and it looks like a modern game. It's so incredibly well made. It controls well. Like, it feels great to actually play. Not a huge 3D platformer guy, but it felt great. The characterizations and everything, it's all just so high quality.
Just to wrap up the level talk here, I wanted to talk about the final level, which is, of course, the meat circus.
Yeah, dude, the meat circus, bro.
Infamous.
So what happens is that like brains get mixed together. The villain of the game, Dr. Lobato, is removing kids' brains from the camp, and at the end, your brain gets mixed with Coach Oleander's brain. So it creates the meat circus. The main character, Rasputin, is an acrobat, a circus performer. So it's him dealing with the trauma of his family, which disowned him for being a psychic, mixed with Coach Oleander's brain, whose dad was a butcher. So on top of the PTSD, he also had his crazy abusive father. So it combines the two ideas, and you're climbing up this giant meat circus. So you're like swinging on sausage. There are steaks flying around.
It's creepy as fuck.
Striking and extremely upsetting as you go through the level.
Yeah, and some of the most sadistic platforming sections I have ever seen.
Famously hard
in any game. Yeah, just a few sections in that are awful. Like
there's the PTSD right there.
Yeah, I'm having flashbacks. Yeah, like this one part where there's like a cylinder of, it's like a climbable thing, kind of like a chain link fence or something. I forget exactly what it's made out of.
It's like a rope net, right?
Yeah, and there's a top of it spiraling up that like it's like a narrow pathway kind of spiraling up this cylinder. So you have to like grab onto the edge. You have to get up on top of it, which the controls are not super great for. It's really easy to overshoot it and fall off the other side of it. You have to get on top very carefully and then like walk along it. And there's like no guidance system in place to like keep you there. You just have to walk that fine line and then like dodge fire and shit while you're doing it. Yeah. That's like the point that caused the most trouble for me, but there's a few in that area.
There's an achievement on Steam. I forget the exact wording, but it's like, I can't believe you actually beat the meat circus. It's like poking fun at themselves.
Yeah, it was like,
they're not going to change
that
the game
bad,
this later.
right? Or something like that.
Yeah. Well, like I think specifically in regards to that level, I think all of the things that came before it in Psychonauts, like I do think that Psychonauts, largely speaking, does control well and it's largely tight, but it's also kind of not, because I think that the actual levels themselves are catered to the specific mechanics of the game very well. I think once we get to the meat circus, they kind of try to overextend, I think, and like try to convince themselves that their platforming mechanics are tighter than they actually are.
For sure.
And then we feel that heavily.
It's not a difficult game, and it should be that. It's not like it's not trivially easy. You have to platform and do the stuff and use your abilities, but a game that's all about the charm, the story, the characters, turning that into a massive core platformer just is not what it should have been, which is kind of bizarre that it got through playtesting.
Especially in like a climax moment. Like truly, look, we're nearing the end of the experience. Like, why would you change gears like this? Like,
plus, it's the classic fucking old game shit where you have to do all of it in one shot. Like any modern game, it would just like let you get checkpoint on the way up. Yeah, but it's like starts you from the bottom every fucking time. Do it perfect
and
one
you've got
shot.
A running clock too. Is there water rising up? Is that what's going on? Because Raz is afraid of water, right?
Yeah, he hates water.
Yeah, so there's water rising up the whole time. If the water hits you, then you die. So there's that aspect of it too. Yeah, it's pretty sadistic. I guess that was kind of the point. Being the final area where you're confronting Raz's emotional baggage now.
Yeah, I just think they went over the top a little bit, right?
Yeah. It did give me an almost FromSoft like feeling, finally getting past it, just like, oh, finally. But like, it wasn't that satisfying, really. It was just like, well, thank God that's behind me. It was kind of a mixture of those emotions.
Certainly.
I just wanted to see the end of the game at that point, something that heavily like narratively driven. Like, you got to see the end. And I knew I was that fucking close.
Yeah, a shame to gatekeep the ending with that. It's just a shame.
So the other half of the game is you exploring the campgrounds, which I think is really fun. There's a scavenger hunt that they give to you that's quite difficult. You run into some bears that can use pyrokinesis and light you on fire and are terrifying. And that's how you navigate to some of the levels. They actually make you get familiar with the campground.
Yeah, great hub world.
Great hub world. The only other character I want to mention is Ford Crawler, who is the head of the Psychonauts, but he is a broken man. He kind of guides you through things after you learn the tutorial, and he kind of like gets you in on the secret mission that Raz is on, and you can summon him at any time to warp around the camp, and you summon him by pulling out a piece of bacon, because Ford Crawler loves bacon. So you always just carry a piece of bacon around with you.
Oh my God, that guy's hilarious.
He does many roles around the camp simultaneously. He's the janitor. He's also the shop clerk. He's underneath the camp at all times.
He's cooking in the mess hall, I think.
Yep. And he's just everywhere at the same time.
Super charming.
Yeah.
Such a great character.
I love that. It's like that character that a lot of cartoons in that time had that just like works every job in town whenever there's like, we need a shop owner or something, or like a fucking city councilman. They'll just
he does it all, dude.
Yeah. Like, I don't know why this is the first example that always comes to me. Maybe because they did play it up so much that of that joke. But it was fucking Cat Dog. Do you guys remember Cat Dog?
Of course,
you ever see that show? the Green Rabbit. I thought it was yeah, the Green Rabbit that was like in every episode as a different, service industry professional or something.
That's right. That's right.
Hilarious. Great bit.
Yep. Great bit.
But yeah, in Psychonauts, he's like, Ford Crawler is like in hiding, right? He doesn't want anyone to know that he's like a high level Psychonaut. So he's just I'm just the janitor and the cook. And
if you would just play Psychonauts 2, you could learn the truth behind Ford Crawler's broken backstory.
I cannot believe I have not played Psychonauts 2 yet. I cannot believe it. Keaton, you haven't either, or have you?
No, I haven't.
Stop playing Elden Ring, go play Psychonauts 2.
yeah, right.
Peek behind the curtain again, we're talking about Psychonauts because I couldn't spoil Psychonauts 2 for them. It's better in every single way, and it's just amazing that they can do a sequel.
Psychonauts 2 is better in every way? That's incredible to hear. I've heard similar sentiments. You fucked up with what?
I Kickstarter backed the game, actually. My name's in the credits of Psychonauts 2. I made the game. It's fine. No big deal. And I have a Whispering Rock t-shirt. Whispering Rock is the name of the campground. And I fucked up by not wearing that. I'm very sorry.
Oh, damn.
When we talk about Psychonauts 2, you better be wearing that fucking thing.
You got it, buddy. You guys should play the game so we can talk about it.
Yes, correct.
So that's pretty much all I had for it. I consider getting into some of the systems, but it's really just like your basic platformer. You get the abilities you would expect of a psychic. There's levitation, pyrokinesis. You can throw objects around and stuff like that. They actually remove a bunch of these abilities. They kind of determine the ones that are dumb. Like invisibility is just a dumb ability. It doesn't do anything. It's just a light puzzle element. But I will sign off this section by talking about Mr. Pokelope, which everyone should go look up a picture of Mr. Pokelope. This is towards the end of the game. You're trying to defeat the final boss, and you need to save Mr. Pokelope so the asylum assistant will help you. And Mr. Pokelope is this little turtle with a crown on his head, and he's just this cute little guy, and you think nothing of it.
Oh my god, he's so cute.
Until you rescue him and give him back to the asylum assistant, and he talks like this. Hey, baby, I missed you. I love you so much. And it's just literally the funniest fucking thing in the entire world. And he's a central character to the story. Shout out Mr. Pokelope.
That is fantastic. Before we shift gears entirely, something about Psychonauts that I do think is interesting, and I would love to get your guys' take on this, is obviously, I think the three of us hold Psychonauts in, great revere. I think gamers in general do, but there's something to me a little more niche about Psychonauts, I think, than maybe other, grand mascots and such. But me, when I see Raz, I think gaming icon. Raz is a gaming icon.
Yeah,
agree or disagree? You guys think so too?
Definitely agree, yeah.
But how many people, even gamers, can you show Raz to and be like, what is he from? Do you know who this is? Do you think that is Psychonauts more of a hardcore gamery thing than I conceive of it to be? Because I don't know, because to me Raz is iconic as fuck.
I think you're spot on. I think it is more niche. The first
it's
game,
a cult classic, right? I mean,
exactly.
It did not sell well on release. It has sold much better since then.
Right.
I saw the sales numbers earlier today when I was looking it up. I don't think it broke 400,000 on release, but then 6 years after release, Double Fine got the publishing rights back. It was, by the way, it was such a bad failure that Majesco, the publishing company, left the video game industry shortly after.
Excellent.
That's amazing.
It did not do well. But then after that, they got to 1.7 million at some point after that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a little more niche than that. I'm looking at the Psychonauts 2 Kickstarter campaign. They asked for 3.3 million and they got 3.9. So that's not nothing. Okay. At the time, that was up there among the highest Kickstarters of all time. Yeah. So it definitely seems like the cult classic. It came out at a bad time. So it came out in 2005, which is very close to when the PlayStation 3. Actually, 2005, the Xbox 360 came out. And then the PlayStation 3 was in 2006. Okay. And it was locked on the Xbox for a month and a half. That's not a long period of time, but if it was trying to drum up any success, you know, it's a game that had been out for a while at that point. But I think it's grown, and Psychonauts 2, you know, not Elden Ring level, but it was extremely well reviewed and kind of had its moment in the sun there.
I think it literally got a Game of the Year nom, I think, at the Game Awards.
I think it did.
It was up. Yeah. It didn't win. Fuck that shit. Should have won.
Yeah, I mean,
it didn't get any awards famously, but it was nominated for everything.
Yeah. I mean, light year in games last year, regardless. But like, even to like sit alongside, you know, literally Game of the Year, like Psychonauts 2. I mean, that to me, if you get a Game of the Year nom, you're sitting within a particular pantheon. You know,
validating for sure.
Validating, certainly. It's just it's weird that there's something about Psychonauts that still feels less than AAA. It still feels smaller. It still feels more niche. I don't know.
Double Fine was indie until they were bought by Microsoft.
Even that to me is weird because like Tim Schafer to me, like there's not a lot of faces in the video game industry. I feel like Tim Schafer's one of them. Yeah. You know, in terms of celebrities and like gaming,
it's like all
game
niche games though. You know, like he's not Kojima. It's just because he's such a character. He is so notable. He is so funny. His writing is so good.
Yeah.
Have you guys played any like? What do you have any other favorite Double Fine games?
Not really. I don't play much. I mean, I've fucked around with Brutal Legend back in the day. I have fucked with Grim Fandango. If that is Double Fine, is that Double Fine? I think we've been over this before in the podcast.
I think Tim Schafer worked on that before he left.
He worked for LucasArts. Yeah, exactly. He worked for LucasArts on a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Well, and then but then like the remaster, which is probably what you played of Grim Fandango, that was released under Double Fine, and then they did
so confusing.
Day of the Tentacle as well, but it's developed by LucasArts, which he was a part of.
Yes. I mean, like that to me is like at least the stuff that I observe, at least maybe even marketing wise, of Double Fine, and obviously me just being familiar with Tim Schafer based off of his stage presence or the interviews that I've seen with him. It seemed he and his team seems like such genuine creators, and like they just have such a clean vision. It's hard not to root for him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Unbelievably charming. You should watch the devs watch speedruns. So he gets a speedrunner in to do Psychonauts 2 and all the devs watch, and he just needles the runner the whole time, and it's amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah, that is amazing. So I guess the biggest question of them all, do you think Psychonauts has a future?
I certainly hope so. I don't even know what Tim Schafer wants to do. So Psychonauts 2 was the dream. Obviously it was a passion project to bring it back after all these years. And with them being bought by Microsoft, they have some like leeway to kind of just keep being Double Fine. They don't have to worry about budget and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think there can be a Psychonauts 3. It may be a good place just to leave it. It was perfect. And Psychonauts 2 is great, but it is just more of Psychonauts. You know, there's nothing game breaking. You go into mental worlds. There's a hub world. So I don't know if there is more room there, but I think if Tim Schafer wants to do it, there will be more Psychonauts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to imagine that like Microsoft would actually like covet Double Fine in the first place and not have their future mapped out in a particular type of way. So I'm sure these answers exist behind closed doors for sure. But like just looking at the available information to us, I would be surprised if we didn't see more of Raz in the future. I would be surprised. Keaton, any closing thoughts on the future of Double Fine or Psychonauts or anything?
I don't know enough to comment, so
fair enough, bro. Go play Psychonauts. Go play
Psychonauts, and then you guys play Psychonauts 2.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Any closing thoughts there, Colin?
Also, or we should play Psychonauts 2? Because I already played
2.
Semantic.
Number 2 came out in 2021. My game of the year, Psychonauts 2.
Nice, dude.
Nice.
Leaving it there, Tevy?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. We are now going to throw to Keaton. Keaton, you played a little game ago. I don't know the time frame of this thing, but a game called Metroid Fusion.
Heard of it?
Sure did.
Heard of it. Let's unpack it a bit, bro.
I remember the timeline exactly. It was leading right up to the Metroid Dread release.
Nice.
Didn't replay any other Metroid games. I, had ambitions to like replay the entire series leading up to it. That did not happen, of course.
Yeah.
But I wanted to replay Fusion. I've only played it once. I love Metroid games. Super Metroid is like one of my top 3 games of all time, probably. I was super pumped for Dread. So I was like, well, Fusion is the last one in the timeline, because there is, like an actual timeline. Not that it matters that much.
Right.
And I guess I'll start off by saying I mean, it's literally just a series of events, and like the story is so like tertiary to the things that I care about in Metroid games. They do start off with a nice little cutscene, and the presentation of Metroid games is always really cool. Seeing how much they do with just like a 2D side-scrolling game. Sometimes they like kind of act out the little cutscenes like in engine, where you like, just see people walking around, or sometimes they have these really cool full screen graphics, sometimes that they like scroll along the screen so you can actually see the entire thing, and some just like really cool artwork. So they start off with some of that and give you a quick intro as to like where you are and what's going on. And wouldn't you know it, Samus is in some trouble. She's in a bind. She's on her own, trapped on a ship. Standard Metroid stuff. But that is what I love about these games so much is the atmosphere, and just kind of that feeling. It doesn't really matter what you're there to do, just knowing that you're on some alien planet. In this case, you're on board a ship for like a biological research group. And Samus, being a mercenary, is kind of working with them in that kind of role, where she's like playing protector for them as they zip around the solar system or universe or whatever it is. Now, what this game does that bothers me is the way the ship is actually laid out and how they kind of let you explore. And by that, I mean how they don't let you explore very much.
Exactly.
As soon as you step on board the ship, they bring up the map, they point to a certain place on the map and say, you need to go here. And then you go along there, and all the other doors are locked shut along the way, just funneling you right there. You get there, the door locks behind you, you talk to the computer, it tells you some stuff, and now the door in front of you opens up, and you just keep going, and it gives you a new point of interest to get to.
Yeah.
So there's that constant like leading you to the next point, which is fine. There's a certain way to do that. I mean, you could give me that point on the map, but it frustrates me that they literally lock the door behind you and don't let you go back and explore at all.
Yeah.
It would have been so easy to just let you do that, unless there's really a point where they can't let you do that. Go ahead, Jeff.
A fundamental misunderstanding of what people like about the series.
Correct.
Metroid became a fucking genre, Metroidvania, and the whole point of those games is free exploration back and forward so I can get items and explore as I see fit. Dread is better about this, but also has some of the same issues, which is just
a little bit, yeah.
You wonder where the disconnect is, from the team not understanding what makes the games great.
Yeah, and I wonder if it is them not understanding or if it's going for a wider audience. Because like with Metroid Fusion, you have to remember this is a Game Boy Advance game.
Yeah.
This is a game that a lot of parents are going to buy for their kids. And, if you threw a kid into Super Metroid, they'd probably get super overwhelmed because that game does not hold your hand. Sometimes the next point of interest is way across the map. And you just you don't know where it's going to be. So you just have to, kind of set out and hope that you come across something.
So, I mean, like, okay, just so I have my head around this appropriately, what year did this come out?
04?
04, sounds right.
I can confirm that.
So this came out, so like, at least in my memory, I played through Metroid Fusion back in the day. But are we talking about different teams than a team that made fucking Metroid Prime?
Yeah.
Yes.
So famously, those games came out on the same day. Metroid Prime and Metroid
I
Fusion.
remember that because I bought them
launched
both
really?
on the same day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild. I didn't know that.
So
2002.
Metroid. Okay, yeah, that's when Prime came out. So the Prime series is developed by Retro, which is actually an American studio based in Texas.
Right.
And then the Fusion game was developed by, I forget whether it's like Nintendo R&D 3 or R&D 1.
R&D
But like
Yeah.
Nintendo proper. It's
Yep.
a Nintendo team, whereas Prime is Retro. So like I
Yep.
mean, I am hard pressed as somebody who also loves Super Metroid. I'm hard pressed to find Metroid in its more esoteric state than the Prime games. And it's weird to think that like Metroid, or specifically Prime 1 and 2, it's weird that those two, that the 2D Metroid could be, actually going down a tighter, more linear, more here on the map. This is where you go. Like you can't go backwards. This is where you go. That's what the 2D's doing. While now this new 3D space is truly capturing the heart of what Super Metroid was going for. And now they're living alongside each other, where I'm wondering, like, was there no, like, higher up checks and balances being like, okay, we're looking at what you're doing in the 3D space, and we're like, that's Metroid, you captured the spirit. And now we're looking at Fusion, and we're being like, was there no checks there? What do you think?
Right. It's like Retro was a studio that got the job because they're both a talented studio and love the series. And as fans, they knew what Metroid is.
Correct.
And Nintendo's like, well, what if we just fuck with it a little bit more? We just change a few things,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's a very corporate kind of response to this, right? Like, how do we make sure that people love this game and get through it? Well, just kind of push them along in the right direction a little bit. Well, how much just a little bit? How about you lock the door behind them? Hang on a second. Like, I mean, Metroid Prime is basically a fan game, right? Where, like you said, they know what makes it magical.
Yeah, I mean, like, just a quick point that I wanted to make here, and I think this is something that, as games progress into the future, have to grapple with, and I don't have an answer myself. I think it's very difficult, but we often conflate quality of life for actual sacrificing what makes games special. So, like, in the Fusion example, like, man, is it a quality of life upgrade for the game to tell you on the map where the next point of interest is? Is that a quality of life upgrade? Or is that actually sacrificing what makes Metroid special? And like, genuinely, I don't know.
It's lowest common denominator, right? So they've set up this game so that any level of video game player can play it. Versus, I think we're beginning to live in a world, and is Elden Ring not the perfect example of this? Where you make a game for the people that love your series. Why would you? Your series has become popular being itself. Why would you then make Dark Souls easy mode to try to mass market it? I believe that's a lesson that the industry is beginning to learn.
Never be lowest common denominator. Make art that is undeniable. And I think that's what Elden Ring did.
Yeah.
I think Elden Ring is undeniable, where people that aren't FromSoft fans can grab onto that because it's so undeniable. Don't be lowest common denominator. That's so cheap and it's boring and corporate and the rest of it.
Yeah. Well, Metroid has had a rough time because it is not sold very well historically. I mean, this is coming 8 years after Super Metroid, which was the last Metroid release. Or was it Zero Mission? Did Zero Mission come before Fusion? I think it did.
No.
But like, even that is
I'll
a
confirm
safe bet. I think that was after.
Zero Mission 2 years after, 2004.
2 years after. Yeah, that's what okay. Yeah, so even that is like a safe bet, and there's still just kind of I mean, they're not testing the waters at that point, but yeah, it just feels like a very corporate response to making sure that a game is palatable and that it actually sells as well as they hope that it does. I'm not sure how Retro Studio got away with making Prime the way that they did.
Right, because like you would assume that Nintendo had to sign off on that project in some ways, the actual creative elements. Not to hijack the conversation too hard, because I think we should get into some of the nitty gritty of Metroid Fusion and the rest of it. Yeah, that just jumps out to me. Like anytime a corporation decides to make a game in a prior series and then betray what makes that series special, in my heart, I'm like, okay, so like you're already betraying a fan base here. Why are you making it a Metroid game? Just make it something else.
Sure.
Like it, I don't know. You don't even necessarily get the marketing boon. I mean, I guess, hardcore fans are going to buy the copy anyway. It's simply confusing to me.
Brand name recognition is still a thing, even if someone hasn't played Super Metroid, they probably heard about it. Like with some of the weird Final Fantasy releases.
Talking about brand recognition, Metroidvania is a genre that is like the biggest genre in the world.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It reminds me of like Final Fantasy Adventure, or is it Legends? Or I can never remember. One of those is Romancing Saga, actually.
So Legends is the Romancing Saga series, and then Legend is the Seiken Densetsu series, which is actually... So Final Fantasy Adventure is Secret of Mana 1, actually. There you go.
Yeah. And that's just like, well, we don't do a lot of RPGs in the West, but we've done Final Fantasy and people know that at least. So just put it under that umbrella and people will recognize it even if they haven't played it. I don't know.
It's weird. It's weird.
I mean, this is certainly a proper Metroid game, but I don't know. Right. That would be my guess as to why they do that and not a new IP. There's so much cost that comes along with a new IP to develop it, and just try to conceptualize this whole new thing and make sure that it fits and it's kind of what you're looking for. But like a new Metroid game, you've already got your foot in the door.
Yeah. This just came to mind, and we're not talking about this game, but talking about where Nintendo's head was at. One of the next games in the series was Metroid Other M.
Yeah.
Which is like the biggest example of they clearly thought that the formula wasn't good enough. So they're going to keep trying different shit. That is them trying to modernize it to be like a modern shooter almost,
Well, that came after Prime 3, right? That was quite a
talking
ways
about
later.
but that not developed by Nintendo. The Prime was kind of separate with Retro Studios.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even just to continue talking about Metroid's permutation and the rest of it, I mean, even by the time we got to Metroid Prime 3, we lost the magic of even the 3D space. Because Metroid Prime 3 is largely a boring fucking video game, whereas 1 and 2 are amazingly fascinating. So it does feel like at some point, creative and, just largely out there type of experiences, such as is the example with Metroid Prime 1 and 2, corporatism always catches up. It always catches up.
Always does. Yeah.
Yep. So fingers crossed for Metroid Prime 4 when we get it, whenever we get it, who knows? But we'll see.
Well,
I mean,
wasn't Prime 4 initially announced it was being developed by Not Retro, and then
I think just Nintendo proper, and then they said, "Oh no, we got to get Retro in
and
here."
then they begged Retro to come to it.
Yeah, dude. And they started over. They started the whole fucking thing over.
No, throw that shit out here.
Yep. So I mean, not to stray too far from the game on hand. Keaton, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Metroid Fusion?
I mean, it's more Metroid. There's not really a ton to say besides what has already been said about the exploration and how things are laid out. The individual rooms and such, they still capture that feeling. I think they added just enough to the formula that it still feels like Metroid. But they added nice things like a wall hang that you can grab a ledge and climb it's get
huge.
Yourself up. Yeah. That's a great little thing. Other than that, aside from my heavy qualms about exploration and how much they front load you with information with the computer acting as Samus's commanding officer. Interestingly enough, she actually alludes to the one time previously that she had to take orders from a commanding officer, which is Adam Malkovich, who is the character in Other M. So I didn't remember that they had actually set that up in Fusion, so that was interesting to see. I don't know if they actually intended to ever do anything with that little story beat. It came to fruition a couple years later.
It's part of Dread as well. The computer in Dread is named Adam as well, and you could tell that they were trying super hard with the story stuff. The SAX, the parasites are introduced in Fusion as well, which is a large portion of what Dread deals with as well. But I think that also shows that they just didn't get what people liked, and people don't give a shit about Metroid stories. They just want to do the Metroid. I
mean, there's got to be something there, right? I mean, if if you ask like, hey, why am I here? And it's literally just like, you're playing a fucking Metroid game, go do it. Like, that is a little too far in one direction. I don't feel like they went too far in the other direction in terms of like needing a story. I don't know. I feel like they found a decent middle ground.
Think about the earlier game stories. So Metroid 2 is genocide, kill the Metroids. Yes. And then Metroid 3 is the last Metroids in captivity, and then it breaks out, and then you have to handle it. That's like the low level of story they were doing it. It's when they start introducing Samus's backstory. And we say that they introduced Adam in this game. It's out of left field in this game. You know, they make it count later on, and they give her this backstory, but you have never heard of this commanding officer Adam before Fusion. And there's screens of text of Samus like thinking about her past and, oh, Adam, I remember him and the wars we fought together. And it's like, slow down, bro. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, how do we feel about the actual, like, I guess, titular component of this being Metroid Fusion? Where, like, I do think that this is, like, if we're talking about the narrative, there's a pretty hard elbow here that feels kind of special, where, like, Samus becomes a Metroid, kind of. Like, she's literally injected with the essence of Metroid. She's literally, that is her fusion point. And, like, the typical, like, image that we're used to with Samus, where she's in her Varia suit, like, the big, she looks very, like, commanding and, like, capable and the rest of it. Her appearance in Fusion is she looks kind of alien and strange, and all of this is coming at the head of her basically having a near-death experience, where a team of doctors, like, literally, like, as like an 11th hour effort, inject her with this essence that is the essence of Metroid. So, like, you know, Samus's fucking legacy of genocide, and then deciding to, like, look after this final survivor, and then basically becoming Metroid in Fusion, there's something kind of special about that, I think.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's kind of special.
My favorite little touch on that is that she then becomes incredibly weak to ice, because Metroids are weak to ice. And that's just a small little gameplay thing, but I think that's incredibly effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell that they do care, and they put some thought into it, but it doesn't get bogged down with all the details and a lot of characters and interactions and stuff. They set up some cool things that, you know, you feel like you're seeing Samus progress as a character in some way, you know, like, literally fusing with the X-Parasite and with the Metroid, kind of becoming these things that she's hunting, and having this kind of like parasitic relationship with them almost.
Right.
Yeah, it's cool. It's just like a cool little, like, kind of theming thing that's, you can still treat totally as background. But I think a big part of why maybe they didn't do story as much in, like, 1, 2, and Super, I mean, you have to remember that the era that those games came out in, where, you know, they had like 2 pages of text in a instruction manual, and that would give you kind of the outset of the story, and that's all they really had to work with. You know, there might have been like a comic book in Nintendo Power, like, laying out some of the details or something. I think there were some Metroid comics. But largely they don't have a ton of stuff a ton of resources to really present that story. But they did manage to show a very cool, powerful moment at the end of Super Metroid, where that last Metroid kept in captivity jumps out and
so
saves
good.
Samus at the end. It's so cool. Yep. And there are like little moments like that in Fusion as well. You know, they're working with, like, you know, a similar graphical fidelity there. So they're able to do similar things, and also, like, the big panning, like, portrait shots that I mentioned are really cool. Something that they couldn't have done on the Super Nintendo, I don't think, or I've never seen anyone really try. But yeah, an interesting kind of transition of eras, and seeing what they now are doing with Dread, with the changing camera angles and you know, cutscenes and stuff. Love that. Love seeing it kind of transition into the 2020s like that.
I mean, we were talking about the progression of Metroid games, and we stopped with, like, Other M and stuff, and Nintendo losing the thread, right? They must have noticed it, because they gave it to Mercury Steam, and people like the games again.
Yeah.
Well, do you know that story? Mercury Steam actually came to Nintendo and pitched a remake of Fusion, and Nintendo was like,
I love that.
I don't know about that. I love your enthusiasm, though. How about a remake of 2? And they gave them the 2 remake, and they
Probably the
did
right
really
call.
well with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, because they were still like selling Fusion on like the 3DS and stuff. But they did so well with that they gave them Dread, which is super cool.
And we should just get Metroid games now. That should be a series that they just make. I think Dread was the best-selling Metroid game of any of them.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
I think moving forward, I think Metroid, like Castlevania, was a series that always sold better in America than Japan, which is always interesting coming from a Japanese developer.
Yeah, certainly. Like, I wonder if, like, actually now that, like, Metroid is actually back in the cultural conversation, I think in a pretty big way with Dread, and, like, the amount of attention that thing got on Twitch and YouTube and stuff like that, I think is no small thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if there is, in fact, a world where, let's say in 2023, we get Metroid Prime 4, and it gets a similar amount of attention, or at least, it's intriguing enough to a general population that, for a weekend, people are kind of salivating over it on Twitch. There might be a world where, like, Metroid does have a renaissance in the 2020s, where, like, actually, like, on off years, we're getting a 3D game one year, and then the alternate year we're getting a 2D game, and we're kind of like playing the Zelda game now. We're anticipating the next console 3D game, and then on the portable hardware or whatever, we'll get a 2D game. I mean, we're dealing with the Switch, which is obviously playing both duties there, but like, if we have 2 teams working on these things and they actually sell millions of copies each time, and like, I didn't play Dread, but I watched a decent amount of content on Twitch and such. Despite it being largely polished, I don't anticipate that game being, I don't think that took that much time, effort, and money to make, comparatively speaking, to like other AAA games or like other $60 price tag games. I would imagine that Nintendo made out pretty well with Dread in the end, financially speaking. Man, I do foresee a future where we see both 2D and 3D Metroid coming back in a pretty major way. I guess we'll see.
The decade
but honestly,
of Metroid.
I see it. How cool would that be? The 2020s are actually the decade of Metroid. That's crazy to even say those words.
I would love that.
Same.
Do we think that Metroid, I mean, obviously, it's weird that we do consider Metroid to be one of Nintendo's flagships, despite it being largely neglected and abused by Nintendo throughout its entire tenure. Is there a world where Metroid just doesn't wind up being like one of those fucking major hard-hitting Zelda, Mario, Star Fox, Kirby, Metroid's in there? Like, why couldn't Metroid be smaller than it is and come out for $40? Why not? Why does this have to be a Nintendo flagship?
He's in Super Smash Brothers. Samus is in Super Smash Brothers.
No.
Is it as simple as that?
Right.
And Nintendo doesn't give a shit. They sell Nintendo games. They sell them for $60. They don't lower the price. That is not something they're interested in doing.
And people buy them.
It's like a prestige thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like a
luxury brand kind of thing.
Exactly.
No,
Yeah. Precisely.
Yeah, I certainly get that, but like I do think like
I wasn't upset at Dread being $60. It's a 10-hour game. That's 10 hour is like almost the minimum you could be without like getting upset for the price.
For sure.
40 would be great, but I didn't feel shortchanged.
Apparently with plenty of replayability as well in Dread in terms of, doing harder difficulties and trying to speedrun it, just like kind of baked within the actual systems itself.
The skill ceiling of Metroid games is awesomely high. I love it. Like, I've played Super Metroid through maybe like 3 times, and every time I play it, I discover a new mechanic. It's wild. Or like I'm getting better at bomb jumping or wall jumping or some of those more advanced things. Yeah. There's just so much to those games. It's awesome. Just the systems at play are all just so good, so impeccable.
Yeah, I guess it is just simply continuously perplexing to me that Nintendo can make a game like Breath of the Wild and say $60, and then put it next to Dread and say $60. That to me, that discrepancy is something that me as a gamer and a consumer will never get over. I'll never understand the standardized pricing in gaming. I'll never fucking get it.
You're absolutely right. It's just the way it is, right? You know,
Right, and we
if
just have
games
to
were
accept
priced
it.
on a per basis, because that probably
Yeah.
affects the budget. The budget for Breath of the Wild
Absolutely.
was a lot more than Dread, but they're all just $60 at the end of the day.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they also anticipate selling a lot more copies of Breath of the Wild than Metroid Dread for sure. So like,
Yeah.
the bigger budget is much more,
Fucking-
justified.
1-2 Switch was $60, right? What is that garbage? Holy shit!
Right. Well,
Was it really? That's insane to me. How is
Yeah.
that not a free game?
It's
I can't
know.
believe they didn't
like
do
Wii
a
Sports.
free
That's what it
game
should have
like
been,
Wii
right?
Sports, yeah.
yeah. Well,
They
I mean,
almost
I will
always
say
do a
this.
pack-in game with their systems. That's wild.
Yeah. I mean, I will say to close this element of the conversation off that, like, hey, Mr. Bowser, because I know that you're listening to this podcast, if Metroid Dread was $40, I would have bought it. Just saying.
You fucked up,
like,
Dougie B.
you would have gotten at least one more sale if that thing was cheaper. Not that math equals
Do
out
the
for you
math on
guys at all.
that.
But like, I'm just saying that there are those of us that like Metroid enough, but we stand on the periphery, and something like a $60 price tag does keep us from engaging in the space in earnest. And if you are actually trying to create this Metroid renaissance, you need to get as many people in your battalion as possible. Honestly, maybe a cheaper price tag might be the way to do it. Not positive. I mean, keep making great games. Dread was great, apparently. But hey, just think about it. I'll say that. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Keaton. Obviously, what else we got to talk about with Metroid Fusion? Anything else that like stayed with you after you rolled credits or whatever?
Honestly, no, not a whole lot really stuck with me. It's, I don't know. It's a decent enough game, but it is kind of a meh point of the series for me. If I were to go back and play any Metroid games, it would probably be Zero Mission, maybe the 2 remake. If I wanted to play something that I haven't played in a while. Fusion, I've played twice now, and I don't know. I'd be mildly surprised if I played through it again. Glad to have played it, but it's, I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on how I feel about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a situation where you're starved for content, though. I played Fusion for the first time a couple months back, and all those critiques are exactly correct, and it could have been and should have been much better. Still a Metroid game. Bosses are still fun. Still looks really good. Still controls really well. It's a fun and good game. It just should have been better.
Yeah. And it feels like it could have been better easily. And
Literally just
Pretty
taking
fucking
out
easily.
the computer. You're done. Good to go.
Yeah, it's
That's it. That's
You don't
simple.
even have to take
Make
it
me
out.
a game designer.
you don't even have to take it out. Like, smaller changes could have been made, and it could have been so much more palatable. But they also split the ship up into like 7 distinct sections.
They're the ship's levels.
Yeah.
And instead of giving them names or something interesting, it numbers them. 1,
brutal.
2.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal.
I think it's 6
Well, they
zones,
do
yeah.
have like coding. They're all separate biomes, I think, to like allow the like the animals that they're studying to give them some kind of habitat.
Right.
And they all have like a 3-letter code. So there's like a tropical section, and it's like TRO in all caps is the 3-letter code for it. But like they'll say like, oh, level like 4 or whatever, and in parentheses TRO. So I don't know. I guess it is supposed to be, like a research ship. I don't know, Johnny, you're a fucking research biologist. Does that seem realistic? I don't know.
Dude, literally all of my sample names are like MFCR001_date. Like it's shit like that. It is. You're not off base.
Yeah.
Counterpoint,
So
it's a video game.
correct. Make it colorful. I want to just like
is indeed.
just real quickly, how about the ornamentation, art and music? How is it?
Oh, you know what? Yeah, the music is great. Sometimes it's not even really music, but it's just like these weird little like beeps and boops of computers and stuff. That it is music, but it's literally like being created through sounds that are just supposed to sound like background noise of the computers and stuff. it's lovely. It's great. It really gives you like the sense of where you are, and it's dynamic enough as you move through. It doesn't get boring. Yeah, it's a great little part of the setting. I think they did awesome with the sound design.
Heck yeah.
Just crazy because it's, you know, made to be played out of one teeny tiny little speaker.
Right.
But it's still so effective. And then they even fucked around with a little bit of like chase horror. Like they you know,
hate it so much. Oh my god.
Would go on to do more with Dread. But yeah, they did a little bit of that with the X-Parasite that's impersonating Samus. Not nearly as much as Dread. Just some small sections where you have to run away and then like hide behind a wall or something and then wait for it to leave. Yeah, I mean, being able to take a sci-fi game on a little handheld and like actually make it kind of scary was pretty impressive.
It's awful chase horror. It's the worst part of the fucking game. They teach you every time you encounter it that you just run away. You have to run away. That's the only way to do it. And then one time, the trick is to hide and wait. And if you keep going, you get killed. And then if you die, they restart you. No checkpoints. Start it again. Fucking chase horror. Get out of here.
Sounds dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to really speak to how I feel about those mechanics. I mean, it's not the most elegant.
It's a surprisingly small part of the game, though.
It is.
In my mind, it was more, but it really happens like maybe 3 times. We're talking 2% of the total gameplay.
Yeah.
Right. How does it look, Keaton? Is it pretty?
It is. Yeah, it's a very nice looking game. I played it on a backlit screen, and you know it was developed for the Game Boy Advance, which you know did not have one at the time. I play it on my PSP Go actually.
Wow!
Because nice. I don't have a copy, and I don't have an EverDrive, so I had to play it on PSP.
I just got both of those things. I just got a Game Boy Advance EverDrive last week, actually.
Nice,
very exciting.
Yeah, the colors might have been a little brighter than they should have been, but yeah, the enemy designs, the boss fights are all really cool. The from what I remember of the different biomes and stuff, I mean they all look exactly how they should. Pretty nice looking game overall. For you know, it is a Game Boy Advance game, like 240p or whatever it is. Yeah, I always enjoy the visual presentation of these games. They do, you know, like as you're in an elevator and they just kind of show a close up of Samus's face in like, you know, this like one of the little portrait like things that is like a unique image that you just see in that little part. And you get to see her up close in this cool stylized, like it looks hand drawn. And they'll have like sci-fi font kind of text scrolling across the screen. That's like her inner monologue, or like a journal that she wrote. Just really cool presentation pieces like that with some really nice artwork. Yeah, cool. I mean, overall, I think that it's presented very, very well. With the graphics and sound design and you know all the cutscenes and stuff, super well done. They were so close to making an amazing game.
I guess final question: does it get a recommend?
If you're a Metroid fan, well, I'd say even if you're not, maybe, or if you're on the fence, yeah, I'd recommend playing it. Yeah,
I think maybe like your first Metroid. Because then you won't be annoyed about the way it does things. So maybe it's a good way to learn how the systems work, the mechanics, and then you can take that into the more open world examples of, say, Super Metroid or Zero Mission.
Yeah, especially if it does actually possess the polish visually and sonically and such that like would be maybe inviting. Yeah, maybe hop in, you know? Cool. Any closing thoughts there, Keith or Colin?
No, sir.
No, I think that about wraps her up.
All right. So, as always, we're going to pivot gears with me a little bit.
John, are you going to talk about a horror game?
I'm going to talk about a flawed horror game.
No
Weird.
way.
Weird.
How
Okay,
weird,
okay,
dude.
okay.
I hate being typecast already, but here we are. So what I'm going to talk about today is a game called Fatal Frame: Maiden of Black Water. Now, this game was remade last year for a number of different systems. I played it on the PS4. It is a remake of a 2014 Wii U title.
But they won't
Is it a
bring us
remake?
Twilight Princess. Fuck.
Or a remaster.
Remaster. The language is correct. It is in fact a remaster. They did not rebuild any of this stuff.
Okay.
So I played it last year, like literally right when it came out, with incredible excitement around this project. I, as I think most of Happy Midnight does, loves Fatal Frame. I like Fatal Frame 1 through 3 on the PS2 mean a lot to me in terms of my survival horror canon and me learning the language of these things and such. Why don't I throw to you guys just immediately? Fatal Frame, what does it mean to you? Colin, what do you got?
Fatal Frame is the game that we keep talking that we're going to do a podcast about, but haven't and never will. That's what Fatal Frame mainly means to me. No, I've only actually played all the way.
Failed promises is what it means to me.
Broken promises. Fatal Frame 2 is one of my favorite games. It's seen as like a lower tier survival horror game, and it's not. Like, Fatal Frame 2 is as good as Resident Evil or Silent Hill. That game blew me away.
Inside and out.
We,
Inside
of course, played that game together in 2013 with shout out cousin Jimmy. Moving on.
Damn, to this episode.
Yeah, dude.
We played Clock Tower 3 and then we played Fatal Frame 2, like back to back.
Yeah. Keaton, Fatal Frame. What do you think?
So back when we talked about doing a podcast about it, I did play probably about the first half of Fatal Frame 1. So yeah, I've got about half of Fatal Frame. What does it mean to me? It's a very cool, interesting brand of horror. I don't know much about like Japanese ghost stories, but like that's what it's all about, which is super cool. And yeah, kind of that classic survival horror of not possessing a whole lot of power in your character.
Yeah.
Just being able to take pictures, and if you get touched, that is going to hurt you a lot. So feeling pretty powerless in this dark, creepy place. It is a pretty unique setting. Playing as some fucking cutesy anime waifu in this.
You haven't seen nothing yet.
Well, I have. I watched the first 3 hours of your Maiden of the Black Water playthrough.
Oh shit. Okay, so maybe you do know what I'm talking about. So like, I think it is completely fair to say, and like, I mean, as I was just alluding to, Fatal Frame means a lot to me as a game series, as does Resident Evil and Silent Hill. But I actually think that is the Triforce of the peak of survival horror back in the day. I think Fatal Frame deserves to live on that mantle directly alongside Silent Hill and Resident Evil. I think it's distinct enough. It sings the same song in many ways, but it is distinct enough, and it is as equally, if not more so, terrifying than the other two titles, at least the original Fatal Frame 1, 2, and 3. We did have another title thrown in there. I think it's called The Mask of the Lunar Eclipse or something. It was a Wii title that was only released in Japan.
Project 04.
Yeah, Project 04, Mask of the Lunar Eclipse, I think, came out, I don't know, sometime in the 2000s on the Wii. We never got in the West. So, to me, Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water was actually a follow-up a decade later to Fatal Frame 3, The Tormented, which is a game that I quite enjoy. So, I played through Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water earlier last year, I think in, right around Halloween, which it is when it released. I fucking hate this video game. I fucking hate this video game. This video game is absolute and utter dog shit. It's trash. I spite fucked my way through this game. I spite fucked it because I wasn't gonna let it best me, And also, like, I was like, I love Fatal Frame. I owe it to Fatal Frame to see the credits of this garbage. Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water is a garbage video game, and that to me is just it's such a shame.
It's heartbreaking to hear. Like early on in your video, I was like, "Oh, I see some stuff that I know he hates and that I kind of hate. Maybe we'll see some stuff, and this will turn around a bit. The ship will correct itself." Those 3 hours did not go so well, but
the ship does not correct itself. Spoiler alert: the ship does not correct itself. But, this brings me again to, like, even going back to our fucking Metroid conversation, fam. Like, so we're talking about, series that we care about where in some ways they're molested by forces outside of themselves. In some ways, in Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water, it's molested by forces internally, which drives me crazy. But when we think about Resident Evil and Silent Hill, they similarly got a pummeling, both critically and I guess sales-wise and the rest of it, after releasing certain titles. You think about Silent Hill when it released Homecoming, people are like, what did you do to my Silent Hill? They released Resident Evil 5, and people are like, what did you do to my Resident Evil? I would say Resident Evil 4. But Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water is that moment for the series, and that just fucking breaks my goddamn heart. So, like, I realized that maybe a couple of hours into my playthrough, I'm like, wait, actually, this is a Homecoming moment. This is a Resident Evil 4 moment. And then when I went back and I looked at the development of it and being like, well, who was responsible for this? Like, who actually made these decisions? It's the series creator.
Oh, wow.
He directed this one too.
Yeah, what's
his name? I have his name right here. Makoto Shibata.
So let me just briefly interject here. Just going back to Fatal Frame 4, it's Mask of the Lunar Eclipse, which I think is what you said. Don't check the tape. So there's two directors, Makoto Shibata and then Goichi Suda. It's co-directed and co-written by Suda51.
No way.
Seriously?
And that's the Fatal Frame that never came out in America.
Oh my god. What does that game look like?
Bizarre.
I have no idea.
There's a fan translation. There you go, John.
Okay, cool. Honestly, I'm in. I'm in for that. Because I'm curious to see if that game would have contained more of the DNA of the games that we love on the PS2. Because I mean, just finally falling into what felt like a AAA modernized take on Fatal Frame. It just felt so jarring to being the DNA between the older games and Maiden of Black Water. It's just not there. It doesn't feel right. So I guess maybe most poignantly, things that Shibata himself has said about his creation and his expectations about creating Maiden of Black Water was that he wanted to make a more action-driven game. That alone is kryptonite to all survival horror fans. It happened with Resident Evil and it happened with Silent Hill, and that's when those series literally went to die. I mean, Resident Evil is obviously having a renaissance now, but Silent Hill's dead because of it. And now Fatal Frame will die because of it, which sucks. He wanted to make a more action-driven game. Obviously, again, going back into the lowest common denominator conversation that we were having earlier with Fatal Frame or with Metroid. And also, and most troubling, Shibata wanted to make a horny game, which is just those are the words out of his mouth, is that we're going to do a Fatal Frame game that is thematically centered around water. And that to me is a very exciting idea, because the actual story themes and characterizations and the darkness around Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water is all centered around water and drowning. And thinking of the idea of a body of water. Think about that language, a body of water, a body of water, and that's just what the language that we use to talk about lakes and shit like that. We call them bodies of water. Also, human beings being made primarily of water. There's this really fun thematic element at play there. And then Shibata said, yo, fuck it. I want there to be a rain mechanic that drenches our hot anime characters, and when they get wet, there's a wetness meter. It's the only meter on the screen is a wetness meter. Your waifus are getting wet. And then as they get wetter, Shibata wanted their clothing to become more revealing, and if they're wearing white, you can see through it. It's clinging to their asses and their breasts and shit like that. It's
literally
fucking gratuitous.
They literally designed the costumes to look as sexy as possible when they're wet.
Yeah, that was in his design document at the top. He's like, horror, action, horny.
The inspiration for the water themes actually sound so spot on too. Have you guys heard this story? This is from the Wikipedia page. The water themes were inspired by Shibata's memories of visiting Los Angeles in 2008. Compared to the damp summer atmosphere and accompanying supernatural feeling he experienced in Japan, he felt he could not find any ghosts in the local dry American summer. This experience emphasized his view of dampness as an important part of ghost encounters. So, like, just something kind of weird in his head, but
like, that's a good premise. Like,
it's a good premise.
That's a good spark of creativity to make a creation thereafter.
Yeah.
And then he said, can we make just, like, the most beautiful women ever and, like, just drench them a little bit? Can that be the game?
I can't enjoy video games unless I'm a little chubbed up. Can we work this? Can we work
I need
this?
to be at half-mast at least.
Like, listen, I love video games, but if I'm not a little chubbed up, I just can't focus. I don't know. I don't know, man. Don't judge me. Don't judge me.
It reminds me of this David Cross bit. David Cross, a comedian. I watched a lot of stand-up, so like I always get reminded of these bits when something like this crosses my mind. He's in his one special, he's talking about a porn movie called My Ass is Haunted. And he does a whole bit about that. And he's like, who the fuck ever in their life said, you know what? I want the cum scared out of me.
Someone has.
Like, do not go in there. Do not go in there.
We are playing a similar game here, and like I hate that I'm saying that. So I guess just to set this game up a little bit, so we can talk about the mechanics and the progression of it and such. Fatal Frame: Maiden of Black Water. It does, in some ways, have the heart of the story of what makes a Fatal Frame story, and that is to say, hell itself exists. Like, you know, actual, like, the worst possible evil with a capital E exists, and we need to stop it. And often, to stop it, you need to make some type of sacrifice, some meaningful sacrifice, and often it is the case in Fatal Frame that you're sacrificing some, you know, more virginal characters, you know, like a beautiful young woman, a shrine maiden, or something like that. This game is playing with that premise exactly. So like black water is basically the hell representative. You can't let the black water flow in, otherwise it's going to possess you, and it's going to, you know, it's going to wreak all hell itself. So basically a maiden is sacrificed, and they basically drown these women, these shrine maidens, inside of boxes to keep the black water from spewing forth from hell. So like we're playing within that premise itself. It's clean, honestly. It's still the same energy of a Fatal Frame game while having the actors and the fixtures colorful and different. That I applaud it for. This game has you playing this story through the eyes of 3 different protagonists. You're playing as Yuri, Hojo, and Miyu. This is, I think, the game's biggest misstep. This game should have only been about Yuri, who is the main character, very clearly the main character. And then you have Hojo, who is a writer who is basically coming to this town and this mountain. Basically, all of the things, all of the, I guess, problematic elements of the story itself are taking place on a mountain by a village, and this mountain basically possesses you and like brings you to it to commit suicide. It's very Japanese, and this Hojo is a writer who's coming here basically to study for his next work. So like he's one of the protagonists. And then Miyu, who's the third protagonist, is the daughter of the protagonist of the first game, which we don't need. We don't need. The first game is so clean in its storytelling, and honestly, so much of Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water undoes the storytelling of Fatal Frame 1 that drives me crazy. It actually rewrites some of the canon in gross ways, which drives me fucking crazy. So Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water is about 15 hours long. If you cut Hojo and Miyu out of the game, we're dealing with a much tighter 8 hours. Because holy fuck is this game bloated. Oh my god, is it bloated. This game isn't a game. You know? That like you are fighting the same 6 ghost types for 15 hours across 3 different characters. And this game thinks that if you're taking pictures with other characters, fighting the same ghost is different. It's not. It's not.
Well, there's like different lens types and stuff too, right? And like a lot of equipment. How important does all that stuff get to actually manage and like use the proper like film types and lenses and all
Zero.
that?
It matters zero.
For
So
real?
like Hojo and Miyu both have their own small thing that makes their relationship to the camera obscura, which is your main weapon in the game. Basically, if you don't know what Fatal Frame is, the spaces that you go to are haunted. Ghosts are going to pop out, and your only tool to deal with that is a camera. And then you whip out a camera, and you basically exorcise the ghost by taking pictures of it. So this game is no different, and it functions in mostly similar ways to its predecessors. It has some different mechanics to it. If you whip out, it goes first person mode when you whip out your camera obscura. And I think maybe mechanically the most distinct element of Maiden of Black Water is that it's looking for limbs or basically pressure points. So if you're like, you have the ability to spin your reticle around by using the trigger buttons or using motion controls if you're a psychopath. You can spin the reticle around, and the idea is it's not just enough to have like the ghost's face in the picture. You want to try to get all of its body within it, because then you detect like 5 different points. And if you can get 5 different points in your reticle at the same time, you basically get a fatal frame, which is like your main blast. And then you get a bunch of free extra damage. You get some invincibility frames, things like that, which can be smally fun if like you know that you have to get 5 limbs or pressure points in the picture itself. If you rotate it enough, it even counts living people. So if there's an ally on the screen and you have 3 of the pressure points of a ghost in frame, you just spin the camera a little bit to also include, the shoulder and head of an ally. That counts as 5. Then you get the fatal frame, and then, you move thereafter and reap the benefits of that. The actual battle system itself isn't necessarily a problem. It's very, very easy. It's very, very repetitive.
Sounds like Resident Evil 4.
Shots fired. Fuck Resident Evil 4. I mean, to your original point, Keaton, like you would assume that like the holder of the camera obscura should have an original way to play with the thing. They do in small ways, but ways that are so irrelevant or so boringly implemented that I'm just playing the game the same way across the 3 characters anyway. So not only should narratively these 2 characters, Hojo and Miyu, should have been cut from the protagonist, I guess, staff role. They could have been NPCs in the game, that's fine, but the fact that I have to, dedicate half of the chapters to these 2 other characters, it's problematic. It's boring. They're not narratively interesting, and they're also not mechanically interesting. So why are they in the game outside of bloat? Drives me fucking crazy.
Well, they couldn't charge $60 if there wasn't 15 hours of gameplay.
It's a $40 game.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Trying to make a
No
joke
excuses.
and turn around on me. Yeah. Whoops.
Yeah, Koei Tecmo, who is obviously the developer of this thing, they have no excuses. So not only is it mechanically redundant, you're fighting the same ghost types throughout the entire experience. You're going to the same locations. So like it is a mission structure. So like they went Resident Evil 4 with it, as opposed to 1, 2, and 3.
God,
Fatal Frame 1,
Well,
2,
even
and 3.
more so, you pick it from a menu and like choose all your loadout.
You chose your
stuff,
loadout,
like,
yeah.
Oh, it's like Luigi's Mansion too, right?
Yes.
Dark Moon.
Wow.
It's like specifically level
Haven't
based,
played
no open world traversal or anything like that.
Right. So like
Or
the
connected
thing
world
is
at
like,
least.
right. So like you go to like, so you're playing in the same locations over and over and over again. And like you expect them, like, if you're doing a thing with Yuri, who is the main character, and she's like the primary mover of the narrative, she goes to a shrine or whatever, and she's there for like 2 hours, and like you see everything, you go to all the rooms, and there are keys and like survival horror things to get into the place. It's a small isolated chapter, and then Hojo goes back there, and he's doing his own thing, but you're fighting the same ghosts, going to the same fucking rooms, and then Miyu goes there, and you're just like, dude, what in the fuck? This is so boring. In the same vein, the actual narrative of this game plays out in like, the way in which I describe the way in which this narrative plays out is like when you were in college and your writing professor was like, okay, you need a 5,000 word essay on this topic. You have one paragraph of information that's like 200 words, And then for the rest of the 5,000 word count, you're just rewording that same paragraph over and over again to fill the word limit.
Yeah, I've been there.
We've all been there, bro. So like we are then watching the same information play out in a cutscene, and then we're seeing two characters say the same fucking dumb thing, and then we're reading it in a document. It's all the same fucking dumb information over and over and over again. And it's not even interesting information. It's literally survival horror Mad Libs. We're like, when so-and-so went to the mountain, she did so-and-so, killed herself. And then she went with this person. And then she also killed herself. And it's like that shit just over and over and over again. It's so fucking boring, dude. This game does not have a game on its hands. This game would be an 8 out of 10 if it was 3 hours long. It's 15 hours long. This game is a 5. You know? It's so absolutely boring.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Why'd you do this to yourself? Why didn't you release yourself? Do you want to dig into the psychology of that a little bit?
Right. I mean, I've been using the language that I literally spite fuck this game. I didn't want this game to beat me, but also it was truly in reverence for the original titles. Like I felt like I owed it to them to see this thing out.
Did you spite fuck it, or did it spite fuck you? I don't know. You dumped all your time into it to play the game.
Dude.
Yeah,
I'm not positive.
I mean,
I don't know how
watching
this
the first
works.
3 hours of your playthrough, I did see you like being hopeful that it wouldn't be that bad. I mean, you couldn't really tell right away that it was going to be complete garbage. Yeah, and I was right there with you, like hoping that, you know, despite the weird presentation and the characters that aren't that interesting, it sounds like it just got worse and dragged on, and bringing you back to those same levels that were not even that big or interesting to begin with. Is pretty heartbreaking, honestly.
Yeah. And just like maybe even just an example of the way in which this game is just like tedious and boring. So like you can't just pick up an item in this game. If there's ammo on the ground, you can't just pick it up.
I've been I wanted to ask about that. Sorry, please explain this stupid mechanic.
So like literally you're picking up ammo and healing items and stuff as you do in video games. You can't just pick it up. You can't just press square to pick thing up. Literally it goes to a screen where it goes over your shoulder and then your character reaches out for it. And you actually like hold R2 to like reach out. And there's like a 20% chance that a ghost is going to reach out and grab your arm as you're going to grab the thing.
Awesome.
And you're thinking like, okay, boring. Like, okay, let's see what happens when the ghost grabs your arm and your character just goes like this. And then you pick it up. And that's it. So like there's no it's not scary when it happens. There's no repercussions. It maybe takes like a 20th of your health. But like it's just talk about bloat. The name of the game here is bloat. You can't even just pick up an item in this game. You have to make it a boring thing.
Well, also they like, you know, it's shiny because of course it is. It's a little glinty object. You see it, and then the game is like, "Hey, did you see this item over here?" And you're just like, "Yeah, I did." And they're like, "Okay, you're standing in front of it now. Do you want to pick it up?" And you're like, "Okay." I hit R2, and then I couldn't tell what was actually happening. Do you have to like let go of R2 if like something happens, or
if you see an arm coming out, you let go of R2 and then it just misses you and then you just go back and do it again and hope it doesn't grab you again.
Lame, man.
It's so fucking lame, dude.
That's so funny. God. Survival horror is famous for solving this issue where like in the older games your character their head would tilt towards items you could pick up.
Right.
As a super subtle in-game way to help you guide that instead of being like narrator pops up, item over here, would you like it?
And then the whole thing is fucking moronic. Also in the same vein, there's an entire button dedicated to showing you where to go.
Nice.
So like if you literally push R2, like a spirit body comes up and just walks the path where you're supposed to be or where you're supposed to go. So like never are you in these very boring, bland environments. Are you even looking where to go? It's just showing you where to go.
The sign of excellent level design and exposition right there.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Why draw the gamer's eye towards the place you're supposed to go when you just hit a button and just watch an NPC walk the way you're supposed to go? It's so fucking utterly moronic. One thing that I will applaud this game for, and I applaud all games for, is a home base. So there's a really special home base in this game where all of your characters are kind of staying for the time being. Basically, it's an antique shop. But there are sections in this game where I think if this game focused on this stuff more, it would be a 9 out of 10, because there are moments in this game that are 9 out of 10, which breaks my heart even more, just to imagine what could have been. So like in these home base sections, basically, you're going to this mountain, and this mountain, once you're like possessed by this mountain's going to own you. There's no shot that you're surviving it. No matter how strong you think your resolve is, you're going to be called back to the mountain. And basically these specters, once you've been to the mountain, these specters come to you in your sleep and basically like sleepwalk you to the mountain. And you think you can get away, but you can never get away. So there's this one section where you like rescue a bunch of people from the mountain, and they're all sleeping in different rooms in the antique shop. And then Hojo, the male character that you play as, sits down and watches the security cams as it bounces between the different rooms of the women sleeping. And you slowly get to watch oddness play out. Like it'll cut to the lobby for a second. And just as it cuts away to a bedroom, you think you might see the door open. And you're just like, wait, was that a thing? And then it'll cut to a hallway for a second, and you kind of see a specter just kind of like wisp through in one way, and you're like, oh shit. And then it'll cut to a room of like one of the people that you rescued sleeping, and there's a ghost just like staring over the bed. And then it'll cut away, and you're like, oh shit. And you come out of you leave the camera view, and you go and you deal with a thing, and normally it results in some type of encounter with a ghost or something like that. But it's so terrifying, and it's so effective. The place that you're supposed to feel home is like, kind of rebelling against you. It's really, really powerful. Even like there's some like really cinematic scares where like just even in a small way, it'll cut to a different camera and a ghost will be staring in the camera itself for a second, and then it'll cut to another camera. Just really nice curated scares that if this game focused on that kind of stuff more, it could have been special. But honestly, out of the 15 or whatever chapters this game has, 2 of them took place in the home base, which is a shame. Yeah, so just like basically, this is just me venting about how much I wish this game was great, and it's just simply not. And as I was mentioning earlier, this game shows you moments of brilliance where you're just like, fuck, if only. And like especially like, I think the meditation of water is so brilliant, and there are so many times where like if you can in your head mix spectral with water and imagine how beautiful and graceful that could be. There are times where like you're fighting enemies or bosses or something like that, and they're just like these big ghosts that are moving as if they're swimming underwater, and you're even seeing bubbles move around them, where it's like mixing the spectral and the aquatic. And like a lot of times they're like larger than life and just like swirling around you as you're trying to like navigate the space. It's wonderful. Some of the imagery in this game is fucking wonderful. Which just focus on that. Please just focus on that instead of the wet titties of my beautiful main character.
Yeah.
But that's like the second biggest thing about this game.
Right.
Oh my god.
Do you think the series gets another entry, or is it the end of the road?
No, I think it's done. Well, I hope it's done.
They even made that envisioning that it would be the final game in the series, which is hilarious.
Just
considering
so
all the
fucking annoying
things we've been talking about. But question for you, Johnny. We've talked before about approaching a game and meeting the developers where they are with the game. But obviously sometimes where the developer is a little too far to tread. And I'm wondering where exactly we meet them, and I don't know, like what does this game need to do? Or I don't know, like how much I'm struggling to phrase
I
this
think
properly.
I know what you're saying, though. I do think I know what you're getting at, because
like where is the middle ground? Like, yeah, because like a lot of this stuff is kind of up to taste. I think, like the mission structure, that is probably a drawing point for some people who don't want to feel that crushing claustrophobia of being stuck in a mansion and having no way out, and like needing to get to a save point or whatever. Having a broken up mission structure lets you really take a breath. But like, I don't know, there are also more elegant, more diegetic ways of handling that. So I'm interested on your take. Yeah,
certainly. And like in many ways, like meeting the developer where they are is something that I always try to do when I'm playing a game. Like trying to not necessarily out of the gate judging the game for being the game the way that it is. Because you weren't present at those board meetings, you don't know the tastes of the developers and such like that. Like maybe you can truly learn something, but like this isn't to my tastes. But like maybe if I just like sit here for a while and truly engage with the game by the rule book that the game is presumably playing by, if you just play that game for a little bit, maybe you'll learn a little something or expand your horizons or something like that. I think maybe that premise does begin to fall apart when you can actually point to words of the developer and say like, oh no, he wanted to make a horny action game. So like if that is where I'm meeting the developer, like there's no guesswork there. I know what he's working at. You know, like I feel like it's often the case when I'm playing video games, it's that I don't know where the developer is coming from, where I'm saying like, okay, kind of just like stew in that a little bit, and maybe we can try to understand where the developer's coming from. I think with a game like this, where I know exactly where Shibata's going, that I am maybe a little less patient with it. But even with a game like Maiden of Black Water, I think I did abide by that premise as much as I possibly could. You know, even just seeing it through to the end, and even just like when I'm feeling frustrated in a game, I'm often being like, okay, does the developer want me to feel frustrated right now? And if that's true, then I shouldn't be trying to find remedy to the frustration. I should feel the frustration and let that fuel me. So like that certainly fueled this experience quite a bit. But yeah, I think Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water is a very specific example where meet the developers where they are. I'm meeting a horny old dude. You know, and I don't think that's a hand that I really want to shake.
Yeah.
I tried. It
comes down to intent, right? Like this is what they intended to do, and I don't know about that.
Yeah. Certainly.
Not for you or for me. I think, and there probably is some market for this. I just can't imagine what it is. It's such a weird cross section of things. A horny horror game. I mean, I guess we have plenty of like, you know,
gamers are
like,
all horn dogs. Those anime games sell very well.
Yeah, and like torture porn is a whole like movie genre.
Certainly. Yeah, certainly.
Horror games are such a smaller niche than horror movies, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this game, the remaster itself sold over 350,000 copies as of January, which is like, those are pretty good numbers, I think.
Yeah.
For what it is, sure.
Yeah.
A Fatal Frame remake of a Wii U game, you know?
Right. So maybe the last thing that I'll say is, and I would like to throw to you guys, just tell me like how you feel about this in general, because it's even present in the original Fatal Frame games, is that like when you're taking pictures of ghosts and like trying to exorcise them and such, you kind of get scored. There's like a scoring system to Fatal Frame where like, you know, like it was present in the original games where they kind of just give you like a small point number and it kind of adds to your XP and stuff like that. But in Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water, there are just numbers on your screen all of the time and you're just blind to them, but it feels like an arcade shooter, you know, like good job, 300,000. Like there's all these numbers, but I never did anything with those numbers. I don't care.
Yeah. It's the classic arcade problem, but it seems beyond out of place in a horror game. Talk about taking out of the experience that an anonymous nobody is scoring your photos of ghosts. The photos are supposed to be functional for protection. Right. It's not supposed to be a game. This is not fun. This is life or death, or at least that's what it's supposed to be portraying.
Right.
Yeah, and this is kind of a weird hang up I've had with Resident Evil for a long time. They always give you a score at the end, like after credits. But I'm largely fine with it because it is very much out of your way. You know, it's just right at the end. It's based on just a few things. It's not super cryptic or anything. And you don't have to care about it if you don't want to. And the way it's presented as just a very end of the game thing, you live the entire game being in that kind of space, you know, and living within the mansion or the police station or whatever. The way that it's done here is pretty over the top. Like you said, constantly giving you numbers at the end of every mission, grading you. It is a mission structure, so, you know, it's almost like incentivizing you to say, oh no, I want to do that one again. I can do that better. I can do it faster, get an A or S rank or whatever. And it's never gelled with me with horror, and it's weird that that and Resident Evil, maybe they just stick out more than anything else because they're so like not action games to me. Even if that's kind of what they are, even like Resident Evil 1. Not a fan. It doesn't fit.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe it does fit a little bit more in Maiden of Black Water than it did in the previous Fatal Frame games, which are more obviously dyed-in-the-wool horror games. But like this, I just simply wasn't on board with it. I was never thinking about those dumb numbers. So, man, I don't know. Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water, it's dumb anime trash. It's dumb waifu simulator anime trash. Like, seriously, just fucking miss it, dude.
I mean, if that's your thing, if you want the cum scared out of you, maybe check it out.
If you want the cum scared out of you, play Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water. But here's the thing. Maiden of Black Water is not scary. It barely feels like a horror game. It feels like a story that just deals with ghosts. And that's a shame. So thanks for ruining one of my favorite series of all time. Go fuck yourself.
You guys ever play like the Resident Evil 5 like mercenaries mode?
That's actually another point I wanted to bring up just real quick. Resident Evil does go all those places. It does go mission structure, mercenaries, all that stuff, but it's always at the end. It's always after you've beaten the core game. The core game, they respect the immersion, the, diegetic nature of all these things that it's working in. Man of the Blackwater just rips it right off and says, nah, we're just doing that from the get-go.
Titties and points, bro. Titties and points.
But also, like, that mercenaries mode from Resident Evil 5 is like it's like a better game than Resident Evil 4 in its entirety.
Amen. Hey, thanks for listening. Miss Fatal Frame Maiden in Blackwater unless you're horny and want to get a little scared. So, as always, we're going to end today's discussion with going around and talking about the new potential inductees into Happy Midnight's Mantle of Happy Masterpieces. So I can already see it in the tea leaves, but why don't we go in discussion order? Colin, does Psychonauts belong in Happy Midnight's Mantle of Happy Go ahead.
We need to have a brief conversation here about criteria.
Sure.
Are we going to observe a one game per franchise rule, or is that something we're not interested in?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't personally think so.
Okay, so Psychonauts 1 goes straight in there.
Hell yeah, dude. Honestly,
soon to be joined by Psychonauts 2.
Beautiful. I agree. I think it's such a special game. Obviously, it lit the three of us up, and it's amazing that a game from 2005 or whatever can truly just like tickle you in 2022 in the ways in which Psychonauts can.
Yeah, it's ageless. Like, just go play it. You'll have a blast. Anytime. It's on every
timeless
platform.
Game. Psychonauts is a timeless game for sure. So I mean, I'm so happy to have that in there alongside the only other inductee so far is Shantae for the Game Boy Color.
All my games make it. What up?
Keaton, Metroid Fusion. Does it belong in Happy Midnight's Mantle of Happy Masterpieces?
Tough.
I am going to have to say no on Fusion, unfortunately. Love Metroid. If I could put an entire series on the mantle, I would put Metroid on there. It's like top 3 for me, series wise. But Fusion is a bit of a lull in the series for me, so I'm gonna have to say no.
And there's like 4 to 5 better Metroid games. Maybe not 4 to 5, but there's at least 3 better Metroid games.
Yeah.
We'll get Metroid in there one day for sure, as it deserves to be. Johnny, does Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater deserve to be in Happy Midnight's Mantle of Happy Masterpieces? Shut the fuck up. Kill yourself on the mountain.
That one's thrown in the fire underneath the mantle, right?
Yes, and I'm gonna defecate atop it. Like, honestly, just let's just end this.
Are you pooping on it and then burning it? So burning your poop with it, or pooping on the ashes?
Pooping on the
clear
ashes,
here.
for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, we're pooping on the ashes. Yeah,
Cool.
for sure.
Cool.
Both of my games and none of your games have made the mantle.
Yep. Join us next week while Colin talks about
Excellent.
a masterpiece and I talk about a shitter. Thank you so much for listening. Genuinely, it means so much to us for sure, as we're just rambling about games that we care about. But hey, hopefully you found a little bit of joy here, a little bit of respite from the madness in the world right now. Take care of each other for sure, especially nowadays. It means a lot.
Hey, John.
What's up?
Shut up. Let's go play Elden Ring. Happy midnight!
Happy midnight.